Today, we are going to be discussing faction rallies and why now they are vastly superior to what they once were, and how Bungie can learn from these changes and apply them to other activities, especially with the arrival of the new Forsaken expansion coming in only a few months. And so, let's get started. What is up, guys? Rick Cactus here, and today, yes, we are going to be discussing how faction rallies are so much better now than they once were, and how these lessons and these changes can be, frankly, easily applied to other areas of the game to drastically improve those areas as well. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here. I am in no means claiming that faction rallies are the perfect event and that there's no room for improvement. Let's be honest, grinding for tokens can get a little monotonous, well, frankly, pretty quickly, and I think that Bungie needs to do a much better job of weighting different activities so there isn't kind of one clear path to get tokens as fast as possible. So again, there's absolutely room for improvement, and we'll talk about that, but overall I think it's undeniable that faction rallies are, in my opinion, better to play, but also that the community is so much more invested now with the new Season 3 faction rallies than previous faction rallies. So what changed? Well, let's start off the top here with the Renown system. The introduction of the Renown system absolutely, I think, made faction rallies just more enjoyable to play. Again, they can get monotonous. Farming for pretty much anything can absolutely get a little boring. You're watching The Office in the background as you're trying to get those tokens, but the Renown system has made things a little bit more interesting and frankly a little bit more skill intensive also, because with the Renown system, you actually have something to lose, and you have to play a little bit differently than you otherwise would. Before this system, you were just either farming lost sectors and going through the same lost sector again and again and again, and that's all you did. Or you were doing the same thing to public events, farming public event after public event, just non-stop farming those. And you didn't really have to change up your playstyle. At least with the Renown system, you somewhat do, and you'll see people's, what they're using, their builds change to accommodate this. The Crimson is seeing a massive amount of play because it heals you when you get a kill, whereas otherwise it would absolutely not. And previous faction rallies, it was just, the best equipment for taking down public events being used, for example. There was no change in your loadout. There was using what you pretty much always use, and that definitely contributed to it just getting boring. And importantly, Renown as a modifier lies kind of in the perfect position, right in the middle of being not effective at all and not changing your gameplay, and also not going too far, like the Blackout modifier for heroic strikes where enemies insta-melee you, and it's just not fun at all, and frankly nowhere near worth doing when that modifier is present because it lacks the rewards. And speaking of that, there's a great segue into the second main reason why, and frankly the biggest reason why faction rallies now are lit and before they were not, and that's the rewards. Bungie finally realized that to incentivize players to grind the game, they need to introduce rewards worth grinding for. And they absolutely did with the faction exotic catalysts. These three catalysts for the Graviton Lance, the Sunshot, and the Sweet Business are massive motivating factors in getting people to play the game. Imagine if they weren't there. Imagine if the faction rewards ended with the exotic ornament for armor pieces. The community interest in faction rallies would be half of what it is now, maybe less. Finally, Bungie is realizing that real incentives are actual real rewards, not just random legendaries that are barely different than other legendaries in the game. Exotic catalysts are unique and they're absolutely worth going after. In fact, what you see with the faction vendor layout should be the template for all vendor layouts in Destiny 2. Why doesn't the EDZ vendor, Devram K, look like this? In fact, if there was a level 50 or level 100 reward for leveling up your EDZ faction, and that reward was, let's say, the Merciless Catalyst, the EDZ would be lit every single day. Everyone would be in the EDZ grinding it for tokens to get the Merciless Catalyst. Why? Because it's a legitimate reward locked behind an activity within the game. That's what it always should have been. I have been saying ad nauseum that exotics should be used as rewards for factions, for leveling up planetary factions like, again, EDZ, Titans, so on. And while I'd still actually like to see that, and catalysts aren't exactly the same as brand new exotics, they're pretty close, and closer than anything else. Now, with all of that being said, there is still one major thing that faction rallies need to improve going forward, and that is the weight of activities when it comes to token distribution. If you do a strike, you get what, like 7 tokens for your faction? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You get 5 for doing a public event, heroic, which takes a fraction of the time of a strike. So you should be getting, 20, 30 plus tokens for doing a strike, because you can get that many tokens for doing a public event, quickly hitting up a lost sector, then doing another public event, hitting up another lost sector. You're getting around, 30 tokens for doing that, and you can easily do that in the space of time it takes you to complete one strike, especially the longer strikes, especially if you're on heroic difficulty. So that makes absolutely no sense. Bungie really needs to tune those so that a well-oiled group can do strikes more efficiently and get better token distribution than just messing around with public events. Same applies for all these other different activities. Adventures, why aren't those giving, a certain amount of tokens, way more than they currently do? What about raid activities? Raid activities should give you a ton of tokens. You're doing the raid, for goodness sakes. So that's the main thing I'd love to see changed moving forward. So, going forward into the Forsaken expansion, what lessons can Bungie take from the improvement of faction rallies and apply to other activities? Well, frankly, and mainly, it's just that you need actual legitimate rewards to incentivize people to play. And that sounds obvious, but frankly, we've gone, 6+ months without that being the case. Finally, Bungie is realizing, hey, people want big rewards like exotic catalysts that will actually improve their loadouts and really actually see play a lot of the time, instead of just legendaries that fall into obscurity. When Forsaken does hit and Season 4, aka Year 2, Season 1 does start, hopefully the next round of faction rallies will have different catalysts, or even outright exotics. I mean, again, you've seen the community reaction, you've seen the community involvement just from catalysts. Imagine if they were brand new exotics tied to each faction. It would be even more so. But it's not just factions where this should be applied. Crucible, Vanguard, again, planetary vendors, all of that stuff should have rewards beyond legendary gear. And again, while this may sound obvious, Bungie has frankly done the opposite several times. I mean, look at Mercury. When the Curse of Osiris was introduced, the Mercury planetary vendor just gave out armor as rewards for leveling up Mercury, essentially. What the heck? Like, no one wants to go and grind Mercury, the few events you can find, to get Mercury tokens just to get armor, which, at even this point in the game, is totally pointless. It's just cosmetic. Now you throw in an exotic catalyst or an exotic, and suddenly Mercury's gonna see a lot more players showing up. So, when the Forsaken expansion drops, and potentially even before then, Bungie needs to incentivize players to do all of the different activities in the game, because there are so many different things to do within the game. The campaign, replaying the campaign missions on harder difficulties, you have strikes, you have all the different planets, you have lost sectors, you have all this stuff that very few people do because the rewards are not worth it. Make the rewards worth it, Bungie. Go past legendaries. Let's get exotics instead of just throwing them into the loot pool where you get them kind of ridiculously easily for just doing public events and so on. Now you actually have them tied as incentives to leveling up certain areas of the game. That also takes away the RNG frustration of exotics. No longer are you just rolling a die to get the exotic you want. You can specifically see an exotic you want for leveling up the Tangled Shore, for example, and go after that specific exotic. So, hopefully these changes to faction rallies are a taste of what's to come rather than an anomaly. And so guys, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.